First of all, calm is just a tool you can use anytime you find yourself in a situation and you don't like the way things are going. You want it to be different. And that's when you can stop, drop, and calm.
Welcome to Get Unstuck and On Target, the weekly podcast that offers senior leaders insights and strategies to not only lead with confidence and vision, but also to achieve groundbreaking results. I'm your host, Mike O'Neill. I coach top-level executives on the power of ethical leadership to forge teams to be as united as they are effective. In each episode, join me for insightful conversations with leaders just like you, providing practical advice to help you get unstuck and propel you and your company forward. Let's get started. Joining me is Nikki Gangemi. Nikki is the founder of Mindful Matters. As a certified master NLP practitioner, hypnotherapist, speaker, trainer, and author, Nikki brings a blend of expertise, compassion, and empowerment to her coaching practice. She helps ambitious entrepreneurs, perfectionists, and people pleasers build unshakable confidence and feel empowered to pursue the goals that they aspire to without letting fear and self-doubt rob them of any more time. Nikki makes a great guest because she has made 3 significant pivots in her life, from actress to teacher to entrepreneur. And it's her firsthand experience that equips her with a unique perspective of having these major life transitions. One of Nikki's books is referencing the calm method. And it's the calm method that I would like to spend most of our time discussing. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you, Mike. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Nikki and I have gotten to know each other through a variety of groups that we have shared interest in. And one thing I picked up on very clearly with Nikki, for those who are watching, you can just see she kind of exudes this idea of belief. If you actually look over her shoulder right now, there's on her wall, it says believe. And I would love to just get to know a little bit about you and your background. You came to your current role not necessarily in a direct path. Can you walk us through a little bit about those pivots that I referenced earlier?
Sure, absolutely. So believe is a word that has become important to me, mostly because it was something that I struggled with for a good part of my life, a lack of self-belief, belief that I could have what I want, belief that I was capable and good enough. And I think that's pretty universal. I think most people can relate to that, even if it was only in one season of their life, and having overcome that and get on the other side. So that's what I love to inspire in others. But the path was basically listening to others, trusting others over myself. And when I was young, what I wanted to do was act. Being an actress was the dream. And what I loved about that was I got to get out of my own head and my own skin and pretend to be somebody else, which felt so much better than being in my own head. So that aspect of just pretending and playing a role was very comfortable to me. I pursued it for, through school, studying and learning and being involved in the different shows, community and school. And I decided the big decision was to give it a real shot and move across the country from New Jersey to Los Angeles. And I made that decision. What triggered that decision was a breakup. I was in a 5-year relationship, my first ever relationship. And when he ended it, I didn't know who I was without him because my whole life was wrapped around him. So I decided this is the perfect time to go pursue that dream. So I moved across the country. I gave myself an entire year, and then I basically just gave up. I didn't believe that I had what it took to make it. And so I was 24. I found myself on a plane back home, and then I didn't know what to do because that's what I always wanted. And I listened to the suggestions of others to be a teacher. I said no until one day I said yes when my best friend said, why don't we be teachers together? There's something called the alternate route, and we can learn on the job. So we go and we both take the state test. I pass, she fails. I become a teacher, she doesn't. Then I blamed her for a really long time for that decision. But I was the one who kept showing up every day for 15 years. So eventually I had to take personal responsibility for my choices. So it was about 12 or 13 years in that I was just really questioning things, because I said, wait a minute, I'm doing everything I was told to do, following all the rules. I got the job, I got the benefits and the pension. Where's my husband and kids? That was promised with that certainty and stability package. So I was complaining to a coworker one day outside of a coffee shop, and he said, why don't you just bloom where you're planted? And I didn't know what that meant, but I knew it was important. So I put it on the back burner. And a few months later, I met who I thought was the guy of my dreams. I met him on Plenty of Fish. And it turns out he wasn't the one, but he was a reason and a very short season. And he had said to me when I was talking with him, Nikki, when you want something in life, you go after it. You don't wait for opportunities to come to you. You pave the way. And with that, Bloom Where You're Planted came back up to the surface, and Mindful Matters was born. So I decided to bloom where I was planted in the school system and create this mindfulness program for kids to teach them how to cope with their emotions and manage their thoughts and know that they're good enough as they are inside. So that's how that started. And after piloting the program for a year, it was shut down by the district. And this time I decided, rather than giving up and going home, so to speak, I thought bigger. What does this look like to do it in a different way? And that's when I attracted a business coach. I learned about the life coaching industry. I didn't know of it before then. And she said, why don't you go from local to global, and from working with kids to working with adults and helping them get out of their own way, like you're doing for yourself. And that's what I did. I ended up resigning from my job at 40 and beginning life again on my terms. And that was in 2019.
And here we are. You named your business Mindful Matters. And one of your books, I guess, is entitled The Calm Method. I want to get to that. And that is, and I would like to weave that into these transitions you made from actress to teacher to entrepreneur. There were some themes that ran throughout, but each of those struck me as being a pretty radical shift. And it may not be intended that way, particularly when you thought about the teacher to adding a mindfulness curriculum and methodology. Now you're trying to apply that to adults. Tell us a little bit about the Calm Method. What is it? What does Calm stand for? And let's just walk through that, because I like to go through that and then come back to how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say this because I think it's important, because everybody at one point or another is making a big decision that's maybe outside of their comfort zone, that's maybe going to push them to grow and get to their next level. And definitely resigning from a stable job and then venturing into entrepreneurship was that for me. One day I was getting ready for work, looking in the mirror, and I was really just thinking this, like, I had the resignation letter typed up, and I was thinking of putting it in the mailbox and following through on it. And as I was thinking about it, I noticed that there was this sense of calm, like in my solar plexus. I could feel it. And I said, okay, I'm going to trust that. I'm going to trust that my body knows more than my mind, because our mind could be very chaotic with thousands of thoughts. I'm going to trust that that sense of calm means that this is the right decision and I'm going to be supported along the journey. So that was important, right? That calm. A couple of years late, actually a year later, was 2020. I was set to do a money mindset training for a jewelry company. And the woman who hired me called me up 2 days before and said, the world has shut down. It was March 2020.
Yep.
Money mindset is no longer important. Can you just help these women? Because everybody's afraid and there's all this uncertainty. And when I hung up the phone, I said, of course. And then I thought, where do I begin? And I decided to just put it aside and sleep on it. And I set the intention to wake up with the perfect idea to help these women. And when I woke up, I did something I never do. And that was I popped up out of bed and I saw the word calm, CALM, and each letter stood for a step. How do you get out of that chaos and that mental chatter in your mind? And how do you get to a place of calm and quiet so you can make those empowering decisions? That's how it was created. So I can go through each of the letters for you.
Would you please?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give an example so to make this tangible so it makes sense. So the C in calm, first of all, calm is just a tool you can use anytime you find yourself in a situation. Could be around work, business, could be in your personal life with your spouse. And you don't like the way things are going. You want it to be different. And that's when you can stop, drop, and calm. So the C is to become conscious of how you're feeling. Oftentimes we have so many thoughts, we don't even know what we're thinking because it's so noisy in there. But if we just stop and take a breath and tune into how we're feeling, we could pretty much know how we're feeling. Even if I'm feeling resistance right now. So the C is become conscious of how you're feeling. It could be overwhelmed. It could be feeling stuck. It could be feeling frustrated or impatient. And taking about 90 seconds to breathe through that emotion. When we just breathe and lean into the emotion rather than pushing it away and you allow it, it starts to dissipate.
Could I ask, when you mentioned all the thoughts that go through your minds, I got that. Lots of thoughts in the minds, but what you're encouraging us to do is become conscious of how you're feeling. It's not the thoughts, it's the feeling.
For the first step, we move into the thoughts in the second. And I say that because with all those thoughts, sometimes we don't really know because it's usually thoughts that trigger these emotions that we're feeling. And sometimes we have so many of them, we just get overwhelmed and it's like, you can't even think. So it's like, start with the emotion, conscious of the emotion, and take a few deep breaths. Neuroscience shows it takes 90 seconds to process an emotion. So if you allow it to be there and befriend it, invite it in. Hello, frustration. Welcome. Have a seat. Let's take a few deep breaths. You can let that emotion just dissipate a little bit and find some relief just through some deep breathing. So that's the first step. The second step, the A, is to become aware of the thoughts you're thinking. So usually thoughts come first and then they trigger emotions. So it's getting those thoughts out of your head and onto paper. Because sometimes, did you ever think something in your mind and then say it out loud to a friend and then you backpedal and you're like, well, that's not exactly what I meant. And then you reframe, right? Because it sounds different when you say it out loud versus just thinking it in your mind. And it even sounds different when you write it on paper and you see it in black and white. So you become aware of the thoughts in your head and you put them on paper. And then you pretend you're a lawyer and you put those thoughts on trial. Are these hard facts? Are these what I'm telling myself? Are these truths? Or are they beliefs, interpretations, projections, attitudes? And most often, they're not facts. So that's the second step. Now, to make this a little tangible, I'll use an example of a client, and this was back during the pandemic. So she was in a situation where she's working from home and her kids were home from college and they just kept interrupting her work. She's a coach. And so she was feeling a little frustrated, conscious that she was frustrated, and a little bit of resentment towards her kids. Aware of the thoughts, she was thinking thoughts like, well, maybe if I had a real job, they wouldn't bother me. They don't respect what I do as a coach. These were the thoughts she was having. And when she put them on trial, like, are these facts? And she's like, no, it's really a belief or an assumption or my interpretation or my attitude. So then once you realize that they're not facts, now you can move into step 3, which is the L, and that's lean into what else is possible. If this is not true, what's another option? What else might be true? And why the first step, the C, is very important is because when we're in that emotion, when we're in that state, we don't have access to any better feeling thoughts. So it's good to process that emotion a little bit, get yourself in a better state, and now you can up-level those thoughts. So she said, one of her reframes was that my kids are just really excited to see me. They're usually away at school and now they're home and they want to spend time with their mom. And I feel grateful because a lot of, 18, 19, 20-year-olds don't want to spend time with their mom. So just this reframe of thinking, she started to move into gratitude and feeling appreciation rather than that resentment. And then the M is make a new decision. And that's where it's like, what's my new focus going to be? And, she decided that she's just going to communicate that she needs this window of time to do what she has to do for her work. And then they can spend time together and do whatever they want. And then take immediate action. So you have the new idea, you make your new decision, and then you take action on it before you talk yourself out of it.
So may I recap what I've heard thus far?
Please.
Calm. C, conscious. Be conscious of how you're feeling. A, aware. Aware of the thoughts that are causing you to feel this. L, lean. Lean into what else is possible. And M, make a new choice. Make a new empowering decision. Those 4 letters help me remember, obviously. But as one who works with clients, introducing them to this method, internalizing this method, where do you find your clients struggle most? Which of the 4 steps prove to be the most challenging?
That's a great question. The most challenging step for clients is step 3, the reframing, the lean into what else is possible. It's like, our thoughts, they're like a train. You go down one track, like one track mind, and you're spinning and spiraling, and you've got all the negative to support your story. And then to pivot and switch tracks is challenging for clients. And that's why I say take time on that step 1. Become conscious of how you're feeling, and then also process that emotion. It's amazing what 90 seconds of deep breathing could do. You could do box breathing, or it's called 4 square breathing, and just taking those really intentional deep breaths and tuning into the moment. And that alone will calm down that emotion so that you have access to different thoughts.
When you're describing, we tend to be on a single track.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know this, but I actually have a client. They actually make railroad track. They don't make the straight track. They make the switches. And the switches are much more complex. But I couldn't help but think of this as you're describing that, is that sometimes, at least I'll speak for myself, sometimes I'm so single-minded, it's hard for me to truly even come up with things that might be possible. How do you help your clients explore possibilities that might not come immediately to mind for them?
I incorporate other tools. So the calm method is just the foundation. It's the foundation for how do I find some relief in how I'm feeling, and how do I up-level my thoughts. So I teach that to everybody so that they have a tool that they can use. And then I infuse other tools. One of them that I use that's really helpful to people is the tool of tapping, also known as EFT, emotional freedom technique. And I'm not sure if you've heard of that. Definitely, there's probably people listening that haven't. But it's basically like acupressure for your emotions.
Interesting.
Yeah. So people that have experienced acupuncture to heal physical pain in the body, where they put those needles on the different meridians along the body, you can tap on those meridians. And by tapping on those meridians along the face and body, you clear up any emotional pain that you might be feeling. It helps to move the emotion, and it helps you also to install new beliefs. So I'll infuse another tool like that to help people. And it's amazing. It just takes a couple of minutes, sometimes just 2 to 3 minutes of talking about the problem while tapping on those meridians. And suddenly I've had clients start to laugh because they're like, well, now this sounds ridiculous. I don't know why I'm saying this. They just see it differently because they shifted their energy. And that's what emotions are.
Ooh, well said. That is what emotions are. You have shared thus far a little bit about your journey, that you took pivots, and you probably already kind of spoke to this next question earlier. And that is, can you share an example where perhaps you or a client got stuck, and what did it take to get unstuck? You've already shared the example of starting out as an actress, but finding yourself migrating to becoming a teacher, but it was not fulfilling. What might be the things that come immediately to mind that where you did in fact get stuck? It might be that or something different.
Yeah, when I've gotten stuck, plenty of examples. One that comes to mind is getting stuck in a pattern of thinking. Like we were talking with that one-track mind, where it's almost like you feel like you can't help yourself. You might realize, I'm moving in the wrong direction. I'm spiraling, and it's very hard to make that shift. So stuck could be stuck in a thought pattern, in a way of thinking. And it could be just feeling like stuck, like you don't have any options. And the one thing that comes to mind, a client that I was working with, he was in a transition period. He actually resigned from he retired. He retired from his teaching career, and he has a love of art. And he thought, I want to still do something else. I'm young enough that I want to still, do something with my life. And he had the idea of selling his artwork. And where he got stuck was he was stuck in the thought that, who would pay for this? Is my artwork really worth this money? And so he was wanting to go to art shows and put his work in there, at the same time thinking, feeling like, is this even good enough? And feeling embarrassed and didn't have the confidence. So through doing work like the calm method and other tools and modalities, he was able to completely eliminate those limiting, because they were limiting beliefs. They were limiting him rather than helping him to grow and expand. And recently he did an art show, and he sold 6 of his paintings.
Goodness.
Yeah. And he said to me, 5 of the paintings are there because of me. He said, I never would have thought these were good enough to show to the public to sell. He's like, but now I see the value. And that was huge. He made my entire month. It's like, so he went from being stuck in the thinking that his work wasn't good enough and he didn't have the confidence, to feeling like, what? This is an expression of who I am, and there's going to be people that are going to see the value in it and want it. And he sold those paintings.
a great example. Nikki, I said at the outset, one reason I wanted to have you as a podcast guest is your willingness to share your experiences, even if those experiences were not really what you originally intended. The fact that you pursued a passion early on to be an actress, and it spoke to you in ways that other things did not, but the reality set in. And you didn't use these words, but what crossed my mind is that what you did is you chose something, but it almost sounded like you settled on something to be a teacher.
That was a settle.
Not that you were be a bad teacher. I could see you'd be a great teacher, but it was a settle. But you stuck with that, quote, settledness for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think this was makes you very attractive as a potential coach for someone, and that is your willingness to just share your real world experiences. As a coach, people might assume that you've got everything figured out. And the reality is you're figuring it out like they are, but you have developed capacity. You have developed tools. You've developed a model to help people maybe reframe how they look at things, the calm model. What I loved is your example is you just bolted right up, and the calm model, that method was clear in your head. And I don't know if this is the case, but my expectation is that while you slept, be it that night or over multiple nights, your brain was processing. Mm-hmm. And when you wake up, it was very clear, but it was very clear. And that's led to not only being part of a core offering you wrote a book on that. Let me make sure I am clear. If people want to learn more about the calm method, they can order your book. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. They can go right to my website, and the book is on Amazon. So they can get the hardcover book or the ebook.
Excellent. Now, I know the book is, I'm sure, very well written, but I know that you do more than just sell the books. Can you share a little bit about and what other ways do you help your clients besides offering them a book?
Thank you. Yes, I work with I coach. So whether that's private coaching or group coaching, at the moment right now, I work with clients privately. And I have some courses where they can learn the basics, the fundamentals of changing your thoughts and managing emotions, so that there's different levels for people. They can come in. I've got things for complimentary for them to just have a little taste and get an understanding of what this is like. There's the book. And then what I love to do is have a conversation with people. There's no way to just go to my website and purchase the coaching. I've got to speak with each person and make sure that I get them on the right track and they get the level of help that they need.
Nikki, you've shared a great deal, but I want to make sure that I gave you the opportunity. As you reflect on this conversation, what do you want the viewers and the listeners to have as takeaways?
What I want the listeners and the viewers to take away is to stop and question the things that you've told yourself over the years and what you've believed. And this is when you don't maybe have something that you want, or you haven't achieved your goal, or maybe you don't feel as happy and fulfilled. Like, that's a cue to just question, because along our journey in life, we listen to the suggestions of others and we adopt them as our own truths, and we don't question. So that's what I would say, to just really question, and what else might be true? Because if you have something that you want, you can have it. You can achieve it. You've got to believe it, and you've got to take action to get it.
That was beautifully said, Nikki. Before we wrap up, I'd like to invite our listeners to ponder a question that affects all leaders. And that is, have you ever wondered why people choose to follow your lead? Is it out of mere obligation, or do they genuinely believe in your vision? Leadership thrives on clarity and confidence. It's not just about command. It's about cultivating practical solutions that drive real bottom line results. I invite you to visit the website that we have, bench-builders.com, for a personalized leadership strategies that leverage my Fortune 500 insights. We're here to elevate your leadership potential and help you make substantial progress towards your goals. So I invite you to lead in a manner that inspires people to follow, not because they have to, but because they want to. They're drawn to your vision. I encourage you to reflect on how you can lead with clarity and confidence, attracting followers not out of obligation, but inspiration. Nikki, your insights have been invaluable. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Now, if our listeners want to engage further or they got questions, how can they reach out to you?
The best way is to go to my website, which is my name, nikkigangemi.com. And from there, you can apply for a complimentary call to speak with me, and you can find some resources to help you until you're ready to have that conversation.
Do me a favor. We're going to have this in the show notes, but go ahead and tell us, how do you spell your name so that they know how to find you online?
Sure. Thank you. It's NIKKIGANGEMI, nikkigangemi.com.
Excellent. Again, we're going to have not only that website in the show notes, we're going to have Nikki's LinkedIn profile and other ways to reach out to her. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Mike.
I also want to thank our subscribers for tuning in, and I hope that today's discussion provides you with some insights to help you get unstuck and on target. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Get Unstuck and On Target. I hope you've gained insights to help you lead with confidence and drive your organization forward. Remember, at Bench Builders, we're committed to your success, your leadership excellence, and your strategic growth. If you've enjoyed our conversation today, please leave a review, rate, and subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. This show really grows when listeners like you share it with others. Who do you know who needs to hear what we talked about today? Until next time, I encourage you to stay focused on the target and continue to break new ground on your leadership path.